The morning was hot, but Louis was shivering. He sat on a wooden bench under the mango tree, staring at the house he built with his own hands. His younger brother now lived there with his wife and 2 children. Louis had nowhere to go. He had just returned to Nigeria after spending 15 years abroad. Everyone had promised to welcome him, but when he arrived, no one came to the airport. No one called, not even his own mother. Louis had to borrow a taxi fare to reach the village. 15 years ago, Louis left home with a heart full of dreams. He wanted a better life, not just for himself, but for his family. He washed dishes in restaurants. He cleaned floors. He slept in tiny rooms with many other men. But he sent money home every month without fail. Now, he had nothing. And the people he gave everything to, they had everything except space for him. Tears filled his eyes, but he wiped them quickly. He had cried too much already. He needed to think. Where would he sleep tonight? What would he eat? A group of children laughed as they ran past him. None of them knew who he was. No one remembered the boy who once carried heavy water buckets for his mother. The man who once paid for the church building in this very village. Louis was back home, but home was no longer his. I still remember the day Louis left Nigeria. He was only 23 then, skinny but full of hope. His mother gave him a small bag of roasted groundnuts and said, "Don't forget your people." His father hugged him once and said, "Make us proud." At the airport, Louis smiled through his fear. He had never been on a plane before. He didn't even have enough clothes. But he had something stronger than fear. He had purpose. He had promised to change his family's story. When he landed in Europe, it was winter. Cold air slapped his face the moment he stepped out of the airport. He had no jacket, no boots, just his thin sweater and rubber shoes. He didn't complain. He told himself, this is the first step. He started with small jobs, washing toilets, picking trash, cleaning hotel rooms. He didn't care about the shame. As long as he could send money home, he was happy. Every week he called home. He laughed when they laughed, even when he was tired or sick. He never told them about the hunger, the racism, or the night he cried alone. His family became comfortable. They started building houses. His brother got a car. His sister opened a shop. They even bought land in the city hall with his money. But not once did anyone ask Louis, "How are you?" He was the family hero. But heroes also bleed. And Louis was bleeding quietly. Before Louis left for Europe, his family held a small prayer gathering. His uncle stood and said, "Louis, you are the light of this family. Go, and when you return, your seat at this table will always be yours." His younger brother King smiled and said, "I'll keep your room just the way you left it." His mother hugged him tightly. "You will never suffer," she whispered. "When you come back, this family will treat you like a king." Those words stayed in Louis' heart for years. He repeated them to himself during cold nights, in between long shifts, and when he slept on the floor after a hard day's work. The promises kept him strong. Back home, his family told neighbors, "Louis is the one building our house. Louis paid for the wedding. Louis sent us money for school." But when Louis returned, no one repeated those words. No one called him their helper. Not even a small thank you. Kenny was now living in the house Louis built. The same room he promised to keep for Louis was now his children's bedroom. His mother barely looked at him. She said, Louis, you should have told us you were coming. Things are hard now." It felt like everyone had moved on. Louis felt like a stranger in his own home, the same home he worked 15 years to build. The promises were just words, and words can fade. Louis finally found a place to sleep in an old store behind the village church. The pastor gave him the key, saying, "It's not much, but at least it has a roof." There was no mattress, no light, just a broken mat on the floor and a dusty window. He swept the room slowly. Every movement reminded him of how far he had fallen, from shared apartments abroad to sleeping in a storage room back home. He placed his small bag in the corner. That was all he had. Left some bag and a phone with no airtime. As he lay on the mat that night, he stared at the ceiling and thought about all the money he had sent home. He had sent enough to build 2 houses, enough to open 3 shops, enough to send 5 children to school. He never saved for himself. He never built anything in his name. He trusted his family too much. That night, his stomach growled. He had not eaten all day. The same family he fed for years had given him nothing, not even a plate of food. He thought of calling his mother. Then he remembered she didn't answer his last 2 calls. Louis turned to the wall and closed his eyes. But sleep didn't come. The silence was loud, the pain was heavy, and the room, though small, felt too big for one forgotten man. The next morning, Louis walked slowly to the village square. There was a community meeting going on. The elders sat under a big tree and the villagers were gathered around them, listening. Louis stood at the back, hoping to hear something that could help him. Maybe someone needed a helper. Maybe there was a small job. But as soon as people noticed him, they started whispering, "Is that not Louis? He looks old. After all that abroad life, he came back like this." Even people who used to praise him now looked at him with pity or worse, with disrespect. An elder who once begged him for money didn't even greet him. When Louis finally spoke, asking if there were any jobs or small help he could do, one man laughed and said, "You? A whole Louis? The man who used to send money like rain? You want to carry blocks now?" Laughter followed. Louis smiled politely, but inside, his heart broke again. He walked away before the meeting ended. He thought of leaving the village, but to where? He had nothing. No friends, no car, no land in his name. That evening, as he passed his family compound, he saw Kine celebrating with friends. Music was playing. Drinks were flowing. The house Louis built was full of joy. But not for him. He stood for a few seconds, then turned and walked away. Not even his own blood called him inside. As the sun began to set, Louis walked toward the river bank, his head heavy with sadness. That place always gave him peace when he was a boy. He remembered throwing stones into the water, dreaming of flying far away. Now, he was back-tired, poor, and unwanted. As he sat on the big rock by the water, someone called his name softly. "Louis?" He turned and saw Mama Ejiro, an old woman who used to live down the street when he was young. Her back was bent, and her wrapper was faded, but her eyes were warm. "Is it really you, my son?" she asked, touching his shoulder. "Look at how you've grown. I remember when you used to fetch water for me." Louis nodded, fighting tears. She was the first person to speak to him kindly since he returned. Mama Ejiro reached into her basket and handed him a small wrap of food. "I cooked yam porridge this morning. You must be hungry." He tried to say no, but his stomach answered for him. He took the food and said, "Thank you, Mama. I haven't eaten since yesterday." They sat together in silence for a while, watching the water. Then she said, "People forget too quickly, Louis, but God does not forget." That night, as he ate the warm food under a mango tree, Louis felt something he hadn't felt in days. Oh, it was small, but it was alive. The next morning, Louis woke up early. He washed his face at the village well and sat under the tree near the church store, holding his phone in his hand. He stared at the screen for minutes. There was no credit, no messages, nothing. Still, he held on to it like it carried his last hope. As he sat there, a message popped up. "Hi, I read your comments on that Facebook group. Are you okay?" It was from someone named Tracy. He had forgotten about the post he made weeks ago when he was still in the city, talking about his struggles and how his family had abandoned him. He replied slowly, telling her the truth. They began to chat every evening. She lived in the US, a nurse, Nigerian born, but raised abroad. She told him how his words touched her heart. She said, "You gave your family everything. Now it's your turn to be loved." At first, Louis didn't believe her kindness. But Tracy didn't stop checking on him. She asked about his health. She sent him airtime. She called just to hear his voice. Weeks passed, and her voice became the only warm thing in his life. Then one day, she said, "Louis, would you consider coming to America again? I can help." He stared at the screen, unsure if he was dreaming. For the first time in a long time, someone was offering him something without asking for anything in return. Louis didn't sleep that night. He kept reading Tracy's message over and over again. His hands shook. Was this real? Could someone really help him after everything he had lost? He thought about the last time he tried to go back abroad. His visa had expired. His passport had been stolen by a roommate. He gave up after that. But Tracy was serious. She asked for his details. She connected him with a travel lawyer. She said, "I'll handle everything. Just be honest with me, Louis." Louis opened up completely. He told her how he had worked like a donkey for his family, how he sent every cent home, how they abandoned him, how he had nothing now, no land, no savings, no home. Tracy didn't judge him. Instead, she said, "You're not stupid, Louis. You're just kind, and kindness is never a mistake." A few weeks later, his documents were ready. Tracy paid for everything: the flights, the medicals, the paperwork. Louis couldn't believe it. On the day he received his visa, he walked to the same house he built. His brother, Kinney, was outside washing his car. "I'm leaving," Louis said. Kinney looked up, confused. "Where to?" "Back to where I came from. But this time not for you. Not for anyone. For me." Kinney laughed. "Good luck." Louis didn't reply. He simply turned and walked away, not as the forgotten brother, but as a man reclaiming his life. When Louis stepped off the plane in the United States, tears filled his eyes. The cold air hit his face again, just like it had 15 years ago. But this time, he wasn't scared. He wasn't alone. Tracy was there, waiting. She waved as he came through the arrival gate, smiling warmly. She wore a thick jacket and held a baby blue scarf. "You made it," she said, hugging him gently. Louis had never felt so safe in someone's arms. Tracy took him home via small but beautiful apartment she owned in Houston. She gave him his own room, his own bed, his own space. "This is your home now," she said. Louis couldn't stop saying thank you. The first night, he stood by the window looking at the city lights. He whispered, "I'm back." But this time, he wasn't the helper. He wasn't the money sender. He was just Louis. Tracy cooked for him. She took him shopping. She showed him places and helped him apply for a work permit. Slowly, Louis began to smile again. Weeks passed, and one day, Tracy told him, "Louis, I don't want to rush you, but I see something special in you. I want you to stay not just in my home, but in my life." Louis looked at her. After years of giving everything to people who didn't care, someone finally chose him, not for what he had, but for who he was. 6 months later, Louis stood in a quiet park, holding a bouquet of flowers. Tracy walked toward him in a beautiful dress, her smile brighter than the morning sun. They had decided to get married, nothing big, just a simple ceremony with a few close friends. Louis never imagined he would find love again, but Tracy saw him when no one else did. She saw his pain, his strength, and his quiet heart. On that day, Louis felt like the richest man in the world. After the wedding, life moved fast. They laughed a lot. They prayed together. They built a life full of peace and understanding. Then came more good news. Tracy was pregnant. Louis couldn't believe it. He was going to be a father, a second chance at life. He sat quietly in the hospital parking lot one afternoon and whispered, "Thank you, God. I thought it was over for me." When their baby boy arrived, Louis held him in his arms and cried. He looked into the child's eyes and said, "You won't grow up begging for love. I will give you everything I didn't have." He named the boy Chimka, which means my God knows in Igbo. Louis no longer worried about his past. He had a new family now, a wife who respected him, a son who gave him purpose. For the first time in his life, he felt full, not with money, but with joy. Life in America was calm and sweet. Louis worked at a hardware store during the week and helped Tracy with their baby on weekends. He finally had what he always prayed for: peace, love, and rest. But one evening, as he scrolled through his old WhatsApp chat, he saw a message from his sister. It had been sitting there for weeks. "Louis, things are hard. Kine lost his job. Mama has been sick. Please, can you help us with just a little money?" He stared at the message for a long time. He remembered the nights he slept hungry while they ate, the time he stood outside the house he built and no one let him in. He remembered how they mocked him at the village meeting. Louis placed the phone on the table and walked away. That night, he blocked all their numbers. He didn't do it out of hate. He did it to heal. The next day, he told Tracy everything. She held his hand and said, "You gave them all you had. Now it's time to give something to yourself." Louis nodded. "I'm not angry anymore," he said softly, "but I won't let them break me again." He sat on the porch that evening, watching the sun go down with Chimka in his arms. He smiled. The silence from home didn't hurt anymore, because this new home, this small, quiet home, was enough. One quiet morning, Louis sat by the window with a pen in his hand. Chimka was sleeping peacefully in his crib and Tracy had gone out for groceries. Louis picked up a notebook and began to write. "Dear Mama," he started. He paused. So many thoughts filled his heart: anger, love, sadness, memories. He continued, "I don't hate you. I just wanted you to see me, not as a bank, not as the son who sends money, but as your child. I worked day and night in a country that didn't care about me, just so you could smile. And when I came home, you couldn't even look at me with love." He wiped his eyes and kept writing. "But I forgive you, all of you. I'm not the same Louis who left Nigeria with a dream and a broken bag. I'm a man now, a father, a husband, and I finally know what it means to be loved." When he finished, he folded the letter and placed it inside an envelope. But he didn't post it. He placed it in a box and wrote on top, "For healing, not revenge." That evening, Louis sat with Tracy and told her, "I wrote a letter I would never send." She smiled. Sometimes, we just need to release the weight. And just like that, a part of Louis' pain began to melt away. Not because they apologized, but because he chose peace. Years passed. Louis watched Chimka grow his little legs running through the house, his laughter filling every room with light. Tracy stood beside him, always gentle, always strong. Their home was not grand, but it was full of love. Louis never became rich, but for the first time, he felt whole. Sometimes, he still thought about Nigeria, about the family that forgot him, about the house he built but never lived in. But it no longer pained him. He had learned something very important. You can give your heart to the world, but you must save a piece for yourself. He started sharing his story on small online platforms, telling people not to lose themselves while trying to save others. His words touched many. Some called him a hero, others called him selfish. But Louis didn't mind. He wasn't bitter. He was healed. One evening, as the sun melted into the sky, Louis held Chimka close and whispered, "I gave everything to people who let me go, but now I give myself to those who hold me tight." He looked at Tracy, who smiled from the doorway. That day, Louis wrote one final sentence in his journal. "They forgot me, but I found myself. And sometimes, that is the greatest victory of all."